Okay, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Reingold Cohen, and I'm called Rose Cohen. And my maiden name was Rose Wolf, and I'm from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. Born in Springs, South Africa. Now I want to tell you a little bit of the history of my parents and where they came from. My mother was Golda Fera, and she was born in Anekst, a little town near Vilna in Lithuania. And my father was born in Oswiecim, which is the town near Auschwitz. And at about 10 years old, the family decided to leave because they felt that there was something brewing. So they left to go to, I think it was West Berlin, lived there for a few years, and my father was still uncomfortable. So he made a journey to Trieste, Italy, which was open to immigrants at the time. He stayed there, I think, for about a year, and went to South America, where one of his brothers was living. Decided he didn't like South America, so made his way then to South Africa. But South Africa had a quota of Jews that were filled, so they had to make their way now to Zimbabwe, Rhodesia at the time.
What year was that about?
I'm not sure. He was born in 1909. So the 1930, 35, somewhere around there.
Okay.
My mother left, they left Lithuania and found a ship near that took her to Cape Town, South Africa. Again, the quota was filled. So she made her way to Harare, Salisbury at the time, and she stayed with her family in Salisbury, and that's where she met my father. He was living in Bulawayo, which is another town in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia at the time, and she met him, and they got married in 1941, I believe, and settled in Bulawayo because it was a very warm, loving, open community. It welcomed all these Jews that had come from Lithuania, all over the world, to make their way to Zimbabwe, and they formed an unbelievable community there. They had a little shul which started, I'm not sure, my husband will tell you when it started because his grandfather was part of it. They go back further than we do in Rhodesia. Life in Bulawayo for us was unbelievable as a Jewish community. Everybody got involved. The immigrant community was very supportive of each other, and this is one of the pictures I've got of all of us young children, probably for Purim or for, you can see us all at a Purim party with our parents.
Beautiful.
And
how large was the Jewish community there, do you think?
it was, I think, about 8,000 at the time. Harare, Salisbury, and Bulawayo, and a few little towns around there. So I'm not sure what the sum total was, but I think in Bulawayo at one time, maybe about 7,000, somewhere around there. And today, there may be about 40 or 50 souls there. That's it. You know, in the 1950s and 60s, everybody who was there stayed there. They didn't want to leave, the kids were staying, and then the political situation changed, and the children started leaving slowly.
And you had a family there, right?
Yes.
Tell me about your children and their upbringing.
Well, no. I was my mother and father, and my brother and myself. My brother now lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with his family. But we grew up in Bulawayo, went to school, went to Cheder. We had a Cheder there, and we didn't have a Jewish day school while we were growing up. Afterwards, they had a Jewish day school, which a lot of the Jewish kids went to, and I think it's still functioning today. With there are no Jewish kids left in Bulawayo. It's still functioning today, and a lot of the black kids are going to this Jewish day school. So anyway, we had, as a child growing up in Bulawayo, we had Cheder as a Jewish child. We had Cheder, we had the Jewish youth movement, which was Habonim. And I think this is Bulawayo. I don't know if you can see it. Bulawayo, I don't think so. Habonim. And this was our social life. And
So you were very Zionist,
very,
obviously.
very Zionist. And as far as so this was our social life, Habonim, Cheder, and we went to a regular school in Bulawayo. And I'm just trying to, we compiled about 20 years ago, I think it is, 1994. It's now 2015. Some of our friends compiled this book, put it together about our history, centennial celebrations. On the back is a picture of the Bulawayo Shul, the synagogue, which we used to go to every Friday night, every Saturday morning. And at the time that we were growing up, initially there was only one Jewish shul. But then afterwards they introduced a more reformed. This was like an conservadox, so this is where we went. A couple of years ago, when I was back in Bulawayo, because I used to go, my mom was in an old-aged home, which was a Jewish old-aged home. It was called Savion Lodge. It's still there. And all the Jewish people went to this old-age home when they couldn't take care of themselves. And I used to go back until about 8 years ago, every year to visit her in the old-age home, sometimes twice a year nearer the end. And this Savion Lodge was provided initially with kosher foods. I think that's still to this day, even though there are very few Jewish residents left there, they still get, now they are sent kosher food from South Africa. But then there must have been about 40 or 50 residents at a time, besides the rest of the community, living in Savion Lodge. And this was a godsend to us because, because we felt that they were taken care of. So, it was unbelievable how they were taken care of.
Was your dad still alive?
No. My dad died. My dad died in 1960. And he requested, this was another thing, the Zionistic influence, even though he had come from Auschwitz and left Auschwitz to go to Berlin and made this whole journey. He requested that his body be transferred to Israel. So a year after he died, my mom took his body to Israel, and he's now buried in Jerusalem. So, but when he left, his family, some of them did go to South America, some of them did go to Israel, and so I think he felt that he wanted to be with the remaining brothers. As far as my kids, the one was born in Bulawayo at the Mater Dei Hospital, and then after we left Bulawayo, my husband and I went to Cape Town, South Africa, and this is where he went to medical school, and this was before my kids were born. He went to medical school, I went to teachers training college in South Africa, in Cape Town, and we lived there for many years before we made the transit to America. They were recruiting at the time that we left. Oh, I'll tell you about my children. My children were born in South Africa, just besides Joel, who was born in Bulawayo. The other two were born in Cape Town. And then they were at school in Cape Town, and then we decided, mainly for political reasons, we decided that we were going to leave South Africa. Not I wanted to go because of political reasons, but it was going. They were trying to recruit a professor to the University of Tennessee. They were looking for somebody for their faculty, and my husband applied, and he made, I think, 2 trips on his own to come and interview, and they recruited him. So when my daughter Talia was 2 years old, we all got onto the aeroplane, and we had her 2nd birthday on the plane. Everybody shared this wonderful experience with us on the aeroplane, and so I've got 3 kids. I've got Joel, who's living in Dallas now. He's married to Shania, who's an Iranian, and they've got twin daughters, and she's actually my husband's nurse here. She's unbelievable. And then Ari is married to Felicia Calliser, the Calliser family from Dallas, and they live in Atlanta. They live in Tucson, sorry, and they've got 3 kids. And Talia, my daughter, is married to Corey Holzer, and they've got 3 kids, and they live in Atlanta. So, but they all, as far as Yiddishkeit is concerned, I think they all felt, initially they were all at Jewish day schools, and then they filtered into the regular schools. But I think they've always felt their Yiddishkeit. I hope they have.
I want to take you back for just a minute.
Yes.
And think about what it was like. Describe a little bit what it was like, that decision to move not only to the U.S. but to Tennessee, and what did your family feel that was left behind, that were still in Africa? How did they feel about the whole thing?
I don't think it was a difficult decision at the time, because we left from South Africa, and the political situation was a little difficult, and also a lot of the medical people in South Africa felt that they had to, if they were going to move, that was the time, in 1977, that they had to move. So they all started applying for positions in the States.
Did you consider anywhere else?
This was, I think, the Memphis at the time was the best situation for my husband. So we went to Memphis. There were other offers, but that at the time was the best offer. After Memphis, we moved around a little bit before we got to Dallas. We were in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He was recruited to go there, and unfortunately by the time he got there, there were financial problems at the University of Michigan. So we left, and then we were in Cleveland. He was at Mount Sinai for 3 years, and Memphis and Cleveland. And then he came to join Dr. Kay and Weinstein here in Dallas. And, because he was doing something different, he was doing reproductive endocrinology and other things, he decided to open his own office here. So the decision wasn't that difficult for us to make. We were only leaving, we actually left, we said goodbye to his mother, who was still alive. His father had died. My father was dead. And so we had the two mothers. And I think that both of them were okay with our...
Did they have any feeling about maybe they'll move here, or any of your
No.
friends moving here the same time you were?
No. My mother was, she had gone through such a journey herself that she was okay to be where she was. She was very well taken care of. The black staff that we had when we were growing up were just so kind and so, we loved them. We were brought up with surrogate black nannies. And these people who took care of the old age home people were incredible. So there wasn't a problem with that. And also I went back very often to see her. My husband's mother died a year after we left, and at the time he couldn't even go back for the funeral because we had just left South Africa. So, but she had family still in South Africa, and they were all, I think, very happy for us that we were emigrating.
What kind of adjustments can you remember that you had, first in Memphis, and then I'm going to jump to Dallas? What?
We left Cape Town. The sun was shining. It was, I think, January. It's summertime, flowers, beautiful, beautiful scenery. I don't know if you've ever been to Cape Town, but it's most beautiful.
Not yet.
Beautiful. You've got to go.
I intend to.
And we left Cape Town, and we arrived in Memphis, and it was February, and we were excited. This was a new life that we were starting, but it was dull. And our situation in Memphis, he was there for 3 years. It was good, and we made wonderful lifelong friends who we're still in contact with. But an adjustment takes at least 2 years as an immigrant. It was good, but there were things that were not that good. But we adjusted, and we were young enough to cope with anything that we needed to cope with. And then we moved on from there. At the Ann Arbor stint was very, very short. Because they didn't come through with what they offered. And then Cleveland, another 3 years. Wonderful Jewish community.
Yes. Like cold.
Yes, that we got involved with. And then Dallas hasn't been a problem, you know, because we've been involved with we've got a lot of, we didn't know many South Africans when we arrived at all. But we've made friends across the board, and you know, so that was the situation, and has been the situation.
Your husband had work everywhere. Did you find work as well? What did you do when you got here?
Yeah, well, I taught in Memphis.
Mm.
I taught for a little while in Memphis, and then Cleveland, when the kids were, you know, I didn't teach for that long. But then when we came to Dallas, I was at the Solomon Schechter for a few years. And then I was with Lois Davidson. And I haven't taught for a long time. But yeah.
Was that your base? Was that your introduction to the Jewish community here, or did you have other things that you got involved in as well?
Well, we joined always shuls and schools, Jewish shuls and schools. That was our priority. So
What did you join when you first moved here? What's synagogue?
we are now members of Chabad and Shereth, and you know, Shereth mainly now because our kids are at Shereth. So we feel Joel and Shania and the twins are at Shereth, so we go to Shereth. And yeah, initially when we arrived at Shereth, they had groups that we all got into, a social group, and that dissipated. That is no longer, I don't think they have them anymore. I don't know. But yeah. So,
have you found that you were able to continue some of your traditions that you had back home here?
Absolutely.
Cultural and
Yes.
Jewish, otherwise?
Yes, absolutely. You know, the traditions that we have, like, are you talking about Shabbat?
Yeah, anything like that. Mm-hmm.
Shabbat is important to us. Every Friday night we're together as a family. And then, you know, even with Joel, my kids were later at Green Hill, all three kids, Joel, Ari, and Talia. They were at Green Hill. But Friday night, Joel was in the marching band and he was in the soccer thing. But if there was anything on a Friday night pertaining to that, we would have Shabbat early.
Mm-hmm.
All get together, and then he could go and do what he had to do.
You're in the right place for, you know, football traditions and
Right.
things like that.
So, you know, so that's it, and I'm praying that my kids will keep on the same traditions that we gave them with their own families.
And how important is Israel to you today? You mentioned it several times growing up.
Very important. We were very Zionistic. When my son Ari turned, you know, had his bar mitzvah, we were moving, I think it was from Cleveland to Dallas. So we had his bar mitzvah in Israel, first of all at the wall. And secondly, we've got, maybe at this time, we've got about 150, 200 relatives in Israel. Because, you know, my husband's father was born in Israel, and I've got a lot of family in Israel, so very important. Israel is very, very important to us.
You've told us how your family has grown. How did your children, the two of them that do not live here, how did they make their decision to move outside of Texas?
Ari, I think Ari followed a job to Arizona, Tucson, and Felicia, his wife, had been at the University of Arizona. She had been to Tucson before, so they made their life there. And unfortunately for us, I wish they were here, but they're not. Talia left. Talia was at UT Texas, and then went off to, I think she had some friends in Atlanta, and she met her husband Corey in Atlanta. So no way that she can move back. So
You never know.
oh well.
Listen, it's not too far. You can still
Right.
see them.
Right.
And you said you've returned to South Africa. You had returned quite a
Yes.
few times. Have you been back since your mom died?
Not to Bulawayo, not to Zimbabwe. We've still got very, very good friends who took such wonderful care of my mother when we weren't there. I was at college with this one friend, and there's still very few people left in Bulawayo. As I said, about 30 or 40 souls. But let me tell you something about Bulawayo. Even though there were very few people left, until a couple of years ago they were having two services every day, morning service, afternoon service. A couple of years ago when I was there, unfortunately the shul burnt down. They don't know what happened or why it happened, but the Jewish community picked themselves up and re-established another place. Now, unfortunately, they have all their services, I think, at Savion Lodge, which is the old age home, because there are so few people left.
Oh, that's a shame.
It is. It is.
What, if anything, do you specifically miss about your life in Zimbabwe and or South Africa?
What do I miss about my life in Zimbabwe? We had a close-knit Jewish community, second to none. You cannot find that anywhere. We're still in contact with everybody, most people that we grew up with. We found somebody on Skype the other day who lives in Australia, on Facebook, who lives in Australia. We haven't seen him for 60 years. And we Skyped him, and it was like, so the closeness of that community is, you cannot find that anywhere else.
It's
So
hard to
that's what we
duplicate
miss.
it.
No,
It is.
you
It's
cannot
hard to
duplicate it.
What does it mean to have citizenship in this country? Do you have citizenship?
yes.
Okay.
Oh yes, it means everything. We are very thrilled to have it, and it's very important to us.
You've told us some fabulous stories. I just want to ask you one final thing. It may sound trite, but are you glad that you came here, and can you tell us why, if so, that you're glad you came here?
You're talking about Dallas
Yeah.
in particular.
Well, even just the States
Yes.
and Dallas in particular.
Yes, well, we're very pleased that we came to the States because, life you have to move on in life. And the situation, although our friends that are living in Cape Town, even though their kids, their children are all over the world, our friends who we grew up with who are living in Cape Town are living a wonderful life, a very Jewishly committed life. And yes, we're thrilled that we did come to the States.
Anything else you like to add or share?
At the moment, I can't think of anything.
That's okay. That's all right.
This book is a wonderful
Yes.
book. Our friends put it together, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot from my husband in the following interview.
Fantastic. Thank you so
Thanks,
much, Rose.
Joe. You made it easy.